there's a limit to how much can be achieved by using sophisticated technologies for the project management process and for the training processes. The world has become a lot more complex. And what we believe very firmly that is driving what we're doing is our belief, which I suspect you all share, given that you've joined us in this webinar, that organizations need fast and successful learning and change programs more than ever before. You probably believe, as we do, that the people leading and part of the change need better systemic ways of changing what they do. That simply continuing to try the same tools and approaches that we've tried up to now, just trying them harder than before in this changed world, is a poor strategy for success. The reason why that's so is because most of the things that affect people's ability to apply new learning or to change what they do in any kind of process lie below the waterline. 80% of these things are hidden. And the core of what we're doing is making tangible these hidden success drivers. Mary McKinley said at a project management conference in 2009, and I paraphrase what she actually said as, in my words, 80% of project failures are due to causes that lie below the waterline. Equally, in the world of learning and development, looking back over 5 decades of research into the business impact of trainings shows that 70 to 90% of trainings fail to deliver the performance change that the board needs to deliver the business strategy. And of course, all of this is getting more complex, and the world is changing faster than ever before. Well, as Marshall McLuhan said, we're living in a world of anxiety, and our age of anxiety is the result of us trying to do today's jobs with yesterday's tools. One of the tools that has emerged out of research into what's necessary for people to be able to change what they do easily has been captured into the 3 pillars of what we're bringing to you today in the webinar. The first pillar is software. Software that helps in a simple and easy way make the intangible tangible. And it gives you a way to define what excellent people performance looks like, shift you from philosophy into pragmatic reality. It's a way of providing best practice tools to accelerate the growth of people performance, a way of measuring the 16 primary drivers behind people's ability to change what they do, up to and including a measure that estimates the return on investment from that change in people performance. And the point of all of this is to give everybody early data that can be used mid-course to correct anything that is not fully on track, to give the change, to give the performance that the client is buying. The other 2 elements, one of them of course is training in becoming human performance technology practitioners, fully able to harness all of the below the waterline factors, which are the larger pool of factors that drive project success, as well as of course on projects that require it or early in the development phase of capability, additional consulting backup from LTS Global. Now, if you think of a typical change process, which could be anything from retraining your frontline customer care operators who handle all of your telephone complaints, all the way through to a complete shake-up of an entire company strategy. You're beginning with your old performance, which has delivered your old results. You define some set of new performance criteria, targets and measures. You put into place some kind of performance development program or change program, and hopefully that leads to new performance and new results. We've learned a lot over the past decades, during that middle bit of the performance development program, to look at it in terms of a sequence of milestones and to look very closely at the leading indicators that are correlated with the performance you want at the end. These might be control charts, they might be a balanced scorecard. On our side, if you're looking at changing what people do, you're looking at changing their behavior, and you're looking at the 16 transfer factors that Ed Holton identified in his research. Now, this is applicable to any kind of performance change project, ranging from a simple online just-in-time training through, for example, a full project manager accreditation program, onto a large-scale organizational change project, up to, for example, even the merger of two large multinationals, where a very large number of people need to change what they do in, at most, 6 months. And I think many of you know how successful mergers tend to be between two large multinationals. I think it's only about 20% of them that actually lead to an increase in value over the long haul. The reason behind all of that lies in the human being. The human is at the end of the chain. That human being is the final link in the actual results that come out of any performance development project or change project. If things work well, you have primarily the desired intended results coming out of people performance. You may have some desirable unintended results. The last thing that you want are predictable but undesired results, or even worse, the unpredictable undesired results. At the moment, a lot of attention is being placed on individual people and on the individual trainers that are meant to deliver that performance shift. However, this diagram is incomplete. A huge influence on what the individual human being does, in particular their ability to activate new learning, to close the knowing-doing gap, lies in the organization. The influence that that huge body has on either disabling or enabling people to apply new learning. And if you want to increase somebody's ability to go from cognitive knowledge through to actual use, you need to provide a support phase in the middle. It's not enough to just have learning. You need the right support to activate that. And the reason for that you can see in this triangle. In terms of how the human functions, there's a distinct barrier between the cognitive level of I understand something and the first practical level of I can do it at the lowest level of application, let alone move to the higher levels of being able to analyze, evaluate, or create. To give you some data to back that up, quite a while ago in '97, there was a study of some public sector managers that showed that training alone only increased their productivity by 28%. But the addition of some follow-up coaching to the training increased productivity by 88%. That's a 3 times gain just by investing a little bit more in coaching. A couple more bits of data on that. A client that we're currently working with in the automotive sector, whilst we were in the early conversations with them, they trained 38 of their staff and tested the training on the basis of a knowledge test. 37 of them passed. They then evaluated those 38 using our 360-degree behavioral feedback. Only 13 of them had activated the knowledge. For what they needed for their business strategy, this was simply not enough. They needed all 38 to activate the knowledge, not just have it in their heads. And this is getting more and more important for most companies today, where their book value is less and less in their tangible assets, more and more in their human assets, but where the board, the C-suite, are growing more and more aware of the fact that they lack the tools that they need, they lack the data that they need to maximize the business impact of the human assets that their organization relies on. That's the game that we're in the process of changing, helping organizations and the training and consulting companies that help them in the area where most organizations are at their weakest: talent management, talent growth, managing change, cultural transformation, things like that. Final piece of data before I shift over into a quick description of the system we're bringing. A study by the Hay Group a little while ago on the difference between engagement and enablement showed that a high engagement, which for many companies today is something that they are still aspiring to, only increased performance by 10%, the leftmost column. Whereas if they had high engagement and high enablement, performance increased by 50%. Now that's a 5 times gain, going from just high engagement up to high engagement plus high enablement. Or if you look at the rightmost column, what's the ROI behind this? Well, if you have high engagement, it's equivalent to 2.5 times revenue growth. If you have high engagement and high enablement, it's equivalent to a 4.5 times revenue growth. That's quite a big gain. Doing that, though, if you think back to the impact of the organization, cannot be done if you just focus on the individual. You need to work with the entire organization as a system. And those of you who have been familiar with things like Lean, Six Sigma, any of those, know that if you want to improve a system, you need to do it using the appropriate tools for process improvement, not try to just single-handedly improve one single element in that process. That's the backbone, the underlying pattern behind what we're doing. It's bringing in a process-oriented approach to what we would call the process of developing people performance. And you see there the cycle that is systematically captured into our software system and that serves as the spine that consulting work gets hooked onto. And I'll direct you first of all to the bottom of the cycle, number 6, the transfer diagnosis. That's the core element of Ed Holton's research over the past couple of decades, figuring out how to accurately measure the impact of the entire organization and the training and the participants on the performance change that any intervention will result in. And it looks something like a balanced scorecard, a dashboard, a set of traffic lights. It captures the top 16 factors that impact somebody's ability to actually activate new learning. These split up into 3 areas: ability, individual motivation, and the entire work environment. You need all 3 of these to be working powerfully together to deliver transfer, full activation at the end. If you look for the moment at ability, 2 of those factors, content validity, is the content of the training something relevant to my job? Transfer design, is the training set up in a way that makes it easy for me to see how to use it? Those are the only 2 out of the 16 factors that are heavily in the control of the trainer. The other 14 are either completely outside the influence even of the trainer or only marginally influenceable by them. For example, under motivation on the right, you see in the middle learner readiness. That's one of the big drivers behind somebody's ability after training to actually put that training to use. Were they adequately prepared for the training before they came in? And the primary person who needs to be involved there is the line manager. Or if you look at work environment, supervisor support, a big factor in whether somebody activates new learning after the training program. Peer support, another equally big factor. In some organizations, even bigger than supervisor support. Or bottom right, resistance to change. Is the culture change resistance? Does it hold people back from trying out new things? That can't be changed by the trainer in the training room. So, all of that comes together in the Learning Transfer System Inventory, set of 16 indicators that are the early indicators that will predict whether a new training, new cognitive knowledge will be put into practice. Now, it doesn't help you very much to have the diagnosis unless you know what to do to cure it. So within the LTSI system is built in a set of recommendations on what are the likely causes of the problems for the various red factors, as well as the possible actions that can be taken. And that helps you address the dominant drivers behind what people do. And you can split these drivers up into 3 boxes. The first box, upper left, is why I do what I do. Those are my personal motivators. Some of these 16 factors measure these individual motivators of people. If they're not motivated to change what they do at an inner level, they do not have this inner compliance drive and are unlikely to activate new learning. Equally, at a group level, if within the organization the social compliance factors are not there, the reasons why we do what we do, people are unlikely to activate new learning. And bottom right, what I could call regulatory compliance. Is the incentive system right? Are there the right positive and negative outcomes for doing or not doing something? If those aren't supporting the new way of doing, no surprise that people don't adopt new ways of doing things. So that, in essence, is what the leading indicators are measuring. Those 3 different types of compliance that define whether somebody has the right motivation in an organizational context to apply new learning. Now, I've used the word activation quite a few times. What's essential in any organization for performance to come out of it is that people do stuff differently. In other words, if you look at them, you see a change in their behavior. So the critical pillar for all of this to work is that you're able to define performance at a behavioral level. You know exactly what exemplary performance looks like when somebody is doing it, what average looks like, and what weak looks like. So part of our system makes it easy before a training to do a 720-degree pre-test of what people are actually currently doing on the job compared to what they ought to be doing. That pre-test gets summarized in a neat little report. After the intervention, you do a post-test as well, which gets summarized into a neat little report. Important for the organization is what comes out after this, which is the difference between them. What's important to the trainer and the individuals is the pre-test, which helps the individual prepare properly for the training by getting some hard feedback on what is it that they are actually doing on the job versus what they ought to be doing to be at the same level as a high performer. So assuming that they have that, that already gives a big bit of support for the learner readiness factor that I alluded to earlier. After the training, what the company is interested in is this behavioral change. That gives the organization a very powerful leading indicator on whether the performance that they desire is likely to show up a year or 2 years later on the bottom line. And if this performance difference is not giving them the shift in behavior that they need for that bottom line target, they have that data early and are able to put into place some mid-course corrections to get what they need. Of course, it's easy to talk about behaviors. A lot of companies are aware that the standard competency frameworks are not sufficient, but few of them are really going to the depth of crystal clear behavioral definitions that are necessary, because it's quite time consuming, especially time consuming for the line managers. So part of our system is to make it easy to assess what are the highest importance, highest frequency behaviors that need to be trained, and separate those from the low importance, low frequency behaviors, so that any intervention, be it a change, be it a training, can focus in on the high importance, high frequency behaviors. All of that is stored in the system as a behavioral library, and anybody using the system has access to the standard behavioral library that everybody has access to, through to a customized behavioral library that would be accessible only to, say, APMG members, through to a completely internal library that would be an ATO or ACO's unique differentiating competitive edge versus other companies. I mentioned a little while ago, and have mentioned since then again, the importance of learner readiness. Again, a lot of line managers want their people to perform, want to do what is necessary to support that, to prepare their learners for a program, but lack the 3 years of education in a social science discipline to know exactly what is the work that they should do before a training program. So one of the modules in the software system is the set of 7 questions that ought to be in an agreement, an alignment process between line manager, participant, HR, and at the end of the day, the company's strategy to maximize the readiness of the learner for the training program. This makes it easy to do. Now let's say that you've done the training program, you've measured your set of 16 indicators after the training program, you've seen a couple of red traffic lights, and you now say, right, we need a mid-course correction. We do not want to crash into any of these factors below the waterline, the way that the Titanic did. What can we do for this mid-course correction? Again, the LTSI kicks out some recommendations for potential actions, and the system helps you then pull together, polling through the participants and the line managers, what are the specific follow-up interventions that will be most helpful now to support the activation of the new learning. That gets captured in the transfer plan itself. That helps you roll it out, and the transfer meter helps you track on a weekly basis or a fortnightly basis the successive improvements in activation of new learning that is coming from this transfer plan. Assuming you've got that and you've done it well, a few months down the line, as we mentioned at the beginning, you'll do your 720-degree feedback test again. From that, you'll get your behavioral change. This then leads into the number that many CEOs wish they had, the return on investment. It's very seldom that a board needs a forensic level accurate return on investment number, precise down to the last decimal point. What the C-suite, what the board really needs is an early guide to making better choices of where to invest their limited resources. And most of the decisions that executives are making, a small improvement in the quality of the data they have leads to a huge improvement in the quality of their decisions. So the ROI module that we have allows you to span the full range from a quick and easy guide through to a very precise number. Which one you go for will depend on how much effort you want to put into it. So far, all of the people we work with tend to use our ROI module at its simplest level, putting in just enough data to get a reliable indicator of where the ROI is and how it's trending. Are our interventions increasing the ROI or decreasing it? Given that very few learning and development interventions look at anything like the ROI, this is already for most people in the learning and development world a big step forwards. All of this leads into giving people in the space of changing human performance the tools they need to access the 6 dominant drivers of human performance. Having clear specifications, having the necessary resources and support, having appropriate consequences, positive and negative, for all stakeholders, up to and including the board, timely and relevant feedback, individual capacity, as well as necessary skills and knowledge.